this beautiful Sunday night, we are coming to you live from our Nile Serena studios. This is Perspective with Josephine Karunji.
Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the program. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. Our conversation tonight will center around sexism in the workplace. Our panel tonight, we only have one guest. Two of our guests were unable to make it for one reason or the other, but we planned to have the president of the Human Resource Managers Association of Uganda and the commissioner from the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. But who we do have with us and who we believe is ably capable to speak to us on this subject is an independent journalist and a researcher with the African Center for Media Excellence, ACME, Lydia Nambiru. A very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Lydia, I would like us to start our conversation. When we talk about sexism in the workplace, what are we saying? What do we mean? What does that mean?
I think sexism in the workplace is every disadvantage that a worker, an employee, might find themselves up against that has nothing to do with their qualifications or competencies at their job, but to do with their gender and how that's defined in the workplace itself, but also generally in the society they're living in.
I know that there are those very obvious things that happen and you say that's sexism, yes. But then I know there are the subtle things. So if you could share with us some examples on what's obvious sexism.
I mean, obvious sexism is the fact that women are paid less than men, right? Obvious sexism is the fact that there are fewer women in management than there are men. Obvious sexism is the fact that women so often get pushed into the service sector, while men proceed to management and whatever. That's obvious. I think less obvious things are sort of blind spots that employers do not pay attention to the fact that a woman's role in society as it exists right now is different. Shouldn't be, but the role we play as members of our societies are different from the roles men play, and that puts us at a bigger disadvantage in some ways than men, and yet our workplaces aren't supportive in helping us navigate those extra disadvantages. So an extra disadvantage which has nothing to do with the workplace, is not your employer, it's not caused by your employer, is that the fact that when you have a child, chances are you will be the primary caregiver.
Yes.
Chances are, when the child needs to go to an immunization, it's you who needs to take that time off. And then for a workplace to be blind to that, to treat you all the same, right? If I'm the primary caregiver and then I work in a workplace that is sort of very enthusiastic about overtime, and if you put in more time, that's when you're going to get promoted. I mean, I can't balance both of those two things. So it's sexism to be sexist. It's also sexism to be blind to the ways in which your employees are operating in a sexist world.
Well, there are those that argue that women are fighting for these spaces, but then they are not able to handle them because of the other job that they have that people don't recognize is actually work that they do. That I have to come and put in the same hours as the man at the office, but then, like you said, immunization, I have to take the child, so I have to ask time off. Maternity leave, I have to take that. So they wonder, why are they asking for more time, for these opportunities when they cannot do them?
It's almost as if you're saying, take it easy on us. We have an extra job.
Pity.
Yeah, have pity on us. So the thing is, I think for every employer, you have to think about, but what's the alternative, right? So, because I think when people say, well, you chose to have a child. I think as a society we have to think, what if she doesn't? Do we want that? Do we have an extra method for producing new human beings? So if women say, well, I care about my career and I'm tired of paying this extra, being at an extra disadvantage. So we all decide we're not going to have those babies. So every employer,
to the population?
Yes, what happens? So I think that's why it's always a negotiation, because we are in it together, right? I am not having children because I am very maternal. Okay, that's part of it. Also, I tell my kids. But part of it is I recognize that this society does actually need new human beings to exist. I am contributing. And if I stop doing it because you're making me decide that just so I can look equal to a man, then where does that lead us? Or even within the employer system, so I meet a good man who is willing to split halfway. I don't always have to take the day off for immunization, but men don't get maternity leave. So even a man who is willing to split child care half and half doesn't have that luxury. I get 4 months, he gets 4 days.
4 days, yes.
Right? It's like 4 days of nursing you right out of hospital, and then he can't contribute beyond that. So I do think, first of all, no company is an island. You exist in the society you exist in, and you have to treat your workers as human beings, and treating them as human beings means recognizing that, the context in which they are operating.
Perhaps it's not looked at as a contribution, having children. Maybe that's why it's not...
That blows my mind. How is it not a contribution? Like, capitalism, if you're like so capitalist, you don't care about social things. But capitalism needs a market. Capitalism needs new labor, 20 years down the road. How can you not recognize it as a contribution? It's of course a contribution. Then, and then even if we all were to be so, immoral that we think, whatever, you chose to have children, and there are many good reasons for not having children. Some of them are very moral reasons not to have children. But the thing is, even a woman who might choose to not have children, who might have chosen to not have children for as long as they're operating in this society, they probably will have them anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because it's also seen, it's not completely a choice itself. If I don't have children, if you can ask any woman who doesn't have children,
society has claims.
Yes, they have claims. They're going, your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, they're going to have loads to say about it. So, if you have children, already your station in life is elevated before those people. So it is partly a choice, it is an obligation, but it's also a duty, right? It's complex, and the thing is, until we can incubate children outside of women, we have an obligation to accommodate that contribution women make.
Yes. Well, is sexism catered for? And I'm asking you because this shouldn't have been your question, but you're a researcher, so you probably have a bit of information about it. Is it catered for in the HR manuals, in labor laws? Does it have a place?
I honestly, the labor laws, we're so far away from having, like, say, equal pay legislation.
Minimum wage.
I mean, we don't even have minimum wage, right? And that has nothing to do with sexism. It's every human being, should be paid the bare minimum for their labor, right? You don't just get to decide based on how desperate they are or whatever to just pay them whatever they want. That's the bare minimum. We don't have the bare minimum. We're a long way from legislation that's sort of like equality legislation. Now, you may have seen the news of the BBC editor who quit over not being paid enough. My favorite part about that woman's, fight is that she can actually say the BBC is illegally paying me less than my male counterparts, right? We can't say that.
Can't say
yeah. So just say you didn't negotiate.
You just took what they were giving you because you were desperate. You needed it.
Oh, because, women are taught, again, to be nice, right? Don't be forceful. Don't
ask for more than you're giving.
Yeah, don't be bitchy.
Pretty.
So, can I say that on your show?
You already did.
Right. So there's a very short distance from a woman being assertive to being, unlikable in the workplace. And we know it. We are not daft. Women we understand the community in which we are dealing. So when I choose not to negotiate, it's because I know what comes with me putting my foot down. I think anybody who is alive now, who is consuming media, can attest to this. How do you feel about loud women? Right? How do you feel about uncompromising women? And is it fair then to expect every woman to put themselves up against that feeling of yours by being loud and assertive? Because the thing is, when a man is assertive, they do not get that same response. So,
well, it's unfortunate that most of our audience today is mostly men, so...
Yeah, everything's always mostly men. Every good thing is mostly men.
Well, let me ask you something, and so just so we can put this conversation into context. Do you have any of the current statistics of the workforce in the formal sector?
Yes. So, according to the latest household survey, National Household Survey, there's 19 million Ugandans of working age. Of those, 15 million are working, and of those, about 9 million are in employment.
Okay.
Right, the kind of the things for which you're paid for.
So, of those 9 million, what is the percentage of men? What is the percentage of women?
So first of all, let's go back to a little bit education, because I think to be in employment, the level of employment,
the level of education counts.
They're saying the level of education should be, you have to meet a certain minimum of education. So among men, about 57% have education that goes beyond secondary school. And among women, it's about 54%. It's not equal, but it's not the worst of disparities. However, when it comes to paid employment, 46% of men are in paid employment. Only 28% of women are in paid employment.
And when you say paid employment, you mean?
You have a job, you get paid for the work you do, right, at that job. Women, about 10% of them, end up working as contributing family members to father's shop. About 61% of women are self-employed. They have a boutique in Wandegea, they are running a saloon, and so on. So it does certainly seem like this formal employment is excluding women, far more than it's excluding men. We cannot say it's not excluding men, because there are quite a few men. There's a small percentage, about 10%, who are, they have the qualifications but haven't found employment and so on. But certainly 46% versus 28%, even though there's hardly any difference in education levels. So, and I think if you're a working woman, it's not surprising. It's not surprising.
All right, Lydia, let me stop you right there. Let's take a short break, but we'll be right back and continue with this conversation, and we'll pick up from where we've left off.
Salons, we offer professional barber, hairdressing at Lugogo Mall, Garden City, Forest Mall, Oasis Mall, and Acacia Mall. Sparkle Saloon, professional, affordable, and quality service.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. We're coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. And tonight, just to remind you of the topic that we are discussing, we're looking at sexism in the workplace. So we went around the streets to find out what your thoughts were on this particular subject. Let's take a look at some of the comments that we got off the streets earlier this week.
I think it exists in a few institutions, but the government is doing all its best to actually let it down by introducing the Equal Opportunity Commissions, which can actually allow both sex, male and females, to have equal opportunities in all employment opportunities come up.
I was looking for a job. So this guy comes, I'd gone to some company to take my application. So the guy comes and tells me, do you want a job? I'm like, yes. So he didn't even give me the chance to enter to put in my papers. He told me, you come, I'm going to give you a job. So as I go there, he introduces me to his other managers and tells them, this is my wife. So he had told me to introduce myself to them as his wife in order to get the job. So when he first played me around, I thought it was a kidding issue. So I played along with him. But I reached a point when I thought about it and said, I can't put in myself to stand in as his wife when I want a job. So I decided to share with him. I told him if I'm not getting this job in right times, it's better for me to be jobless.
I think discrimination due to gender should not really matter, because it's about someone's brain, how you reason out an issue, and not about if you're male or female. Actually, when we get into some of these group activities we have, you find out that sometimes the women have brighter ideas than we the men can have. So I think discrimination by gender is really not something to base on.
So one shouldn't be given in a job because of A or B or C. For example, women, we shouldn't give in, like they shouldn't put that, they shouldn't sideline it like you should give in your body for a job.
It's true that in many organizations that you go, the gender split between men and women tends to be skewed more towards the male than to females. And I think there are many reasons to that. It's an unacceptable thing, but if you look at it more holistically, I think there are many reasons that drive that. You know, every time we read in the newspapers, we read academic research, we read all sorts of information coming in the public domain, which talks a lot about the girl child dropping out of the school in various stages. You know, you start from primary school, how many are able to start P1 and how many girls drop out before they get to P7. You'll find that already there are more girls that drop out than their male colleagues. Graduating from primary school into secondary, again, you get more drops. The same trend goes on up to when you get into tertiary education. I was reading a report just this morning, and most of the evidence over the last 10 to 15 years, the ratio of ladies or the ratio of females to males that go to tertiary institutions is in the order of 100 to 78, skewed in favor of the men. So with that kind of reality, it's almost inevitable that when you go to the formal workplace, you'll find more males than females. My comment on that would be, yes, I think it's a reality. It's nobody can deny that there will be individuals who engage in that. Nobody can deny that there will be certain managers or certain leaders in organizations that would like to take advantage of their position and take advantage of other employees to try and pursue that line. But the good news is that many organizations have come down very hard in terms of protecting other employees from any form of sexual harassment. Whether that employee be a man or be a woman, there are very strong guidelines and very strong policies across the organizations that, you know, and you earlier on mentioned the fact that, you know, because of the strong organization policies protecting employees against sexual harassment, it's now moved to more subtle ways of how people do harassment, you know, unwelcome, you know, body contact, unwelcome, you know, communication. What organizations have done, including the one that I work for, We have reviewed our HR policy guidelines to make sure that we protect our employees even from the subtle harassment or subtle unwelcome advances. Where I work, even an unwelcome wink to an employee is considered as a harassment. It's considered as harassment. So I am saying, yes, there are elements who still want to do it, but B, there are lots of strong provisions in any employment situation where employees are protected.
Tonight we're talking sexism, and with me in the studio is Lydia Namubiru, who is an independent journalist and also a researcher with ACME, that is African Media Center for Excellence. And so we're talking sexism in the workplace, and I wanted to ask you this question. Do you think, Lydia, that there are some roles that are typically for men and then some that are typically for women?
I don't believe that. From time to time, I see statistics with people saying women choose care work more than men choose it. But for me, you know, even if that care is doctoring and whatever, it's so close to how women are socialized anyway that I wonder, was that an actual choice? Or were you raised to think you will do better in that field than others? But are there things women do better than men? I think you'd have to think there's some essential similarity in the population of women generally that at least I do not see between me and, you know, other women. I think we are all so different that if we end up in the same places, we're very different, but very often our circumstances are pretty similar. So I think if we tend to crowd in the same places, it's more circumstances than innate nature.
And the reason I ask this question is, for example, if you looked around at most of the people holding the positions of drivers in most organizations, and that's just an example, you're going to notice it's mostly men. Why do you think? And then let's also look at the top management positions. That's mostly men as well. It's only just a few times that you have a woman there, and we celebrate them. We make noise about it because we actually look at it like an accomplishment.
Right, drivers. And you go all the way back to what toys we were bought. And the guys got cars. Right?
What did we get?
We got dolls. we made our own dolls often, right? The guys got cars. The guys are very encouraged. I keep telling this about, I loved computers at a younger age, and I would spend a lot of time on them. And people around the home would tell me I was only trying to dodge household work, right? My brothers never got told that, right? So my brothers end up in STEM. My brothers end up as software developers, and I end up a storyteller.
Yes.
Yes. So it's very easy to then. It's very easy. After a while, you find so many storytelling women, and you say, yeah, women are just much better at words and talking and whatever.
You know how they say women say 14,000 words in a day? Men say 7,000?
I cannot vouch for that statistic. But then, so here's the thing. But still, in the storytelling industry of journalism, all the managers are men. The biggest names are men. So it's really that when the opportunity is bigger, yeah, it goes to a man. We cook. We're made to cook everywhere. Look at all the chef shows. Look at the Instagram chefs, right? They are men. When it starts to pay, then the gender tendency towards it, right, gets a bit fuzzled. When it's free, right, or less paying. And actually you see that a lot. Like journalism used to be a man's job. And I think any journalist who is even just 10 years older than me will tell you stories of going to the gallery at Parliament to cover stories and being sexually assaulted by fellow men. Any female journalist, right? By men, by male journalists. It used to be a very male-dominated field. As journalism goes into decline, pays less, you start to see more women being allowed in. So for me, it always goes back to, for whatever reason, we've decided for more opportunities, go to men first. And then when it becomes truly unacceptable, you start to see affirmative action when it letting women in, when it becomes, well, not that attractive anymore, you start to see more effort to bring women in. So basically, women get whatever men leave over.
Do you think that, from your statistics or from your research, how does the income of men compare to that of women?
In this country?
In this country.
Across the board, women earn about half of what men earn.
In this country?
In this country.
Okay.
About, and it's funny because on social media when people are having these arguments, they have them using statistics from the Western world where there's been so much effort to balance things off, so then they start arguing, oh, it's not 90, it's $99 to a cent. In this country, it is half. In rural areas, women, the average woman earns about 88,000, the average man about 150,000. In urban areas, the average woman earns about 150,000 a month, the average man about 300,000. Among us, the people with degrees on our heads, the average man earns 900,000 and the average woman 600,000.
Where is this information from?
This is from the Uganda National Household Survey by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics in 2016.
2016, that's quite
17.
recent.
Yeah, it is quite recent.
How can women take hold of the opportunities that are out there? How can they start claiming the other half of that salary that's going elsewhere?
First of all, I think women need to stop being nice and refusing to fight. I think it's very unfair. Yeah, and but for the most part, because of how we are socialized, we choose to go wherever that we can do something for ourselves without fighting, which is why 61% of us are in self-employment compared to about 44% of men.
Would rather not fight in the
Yeah, I would rather not fight. Let me just go and set up my thing where, you know, I don't have to fight this, right?
I can have time for my child, can have this, so, you know, it's
right.
safer.
But the thing is, your parents paid for you to go to school, fight. That's the thing. We have to advocate for ourselves, and it's about time. Stop, you know.
Being nice.
Yes, stop being nice. that's the first part of it. But also, educate yourself. Find out how much your male colleagues are paid.
Okay, just before we start telling people to check, to hack into things and check emails, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Brought to you by StarTimes. Enjoy digital life.
Welcome back. So just before we took a break, Lydia was telling us how women can start to take advantage of the opportunities that are available and, you know, get ahead. And you were talking about education.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, so I would say to women, you're not any less educated than your male colleagues. And I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I have no reason to believe you're less hardworking. Knowing those two things, find out how much your male colleagues are paid. Find a way of finding out. I was just telling Josephine over the break, I know how much my male colleagues earn. And, you know, especially
compared to you, to your salary?
Well, I know how much I earn, I know how much they earn, so I know what the difference is.
You don't want to share the difference?
Well, I will, when I negotiate with them, because some of them are my bosses, I negotiate, you know, from a point of knowledge. But and then the other thing is we should talk about, you should talk more about transparency payment systems. So the public service is pretty transparent in how much it pays other people so at the very least you shouldn't be denied the opportunity to feel bad about how badly your employers are treating you. So but also I think there are other reasons why we earn less that aren't just, you know, they fleeced you off in a bad negotiation. Part of it is, of course, sometimes we are unable to work the hours that our colleagues work, and so you should negotiate for better terms at home, right? Do not marry somebody who thinks you're the only one who is going to take care of their kids, especially in this society where they even get his name, not yours. It's unfair, and it's no reason. Negotiate for better terms even at home. Have better hours at home. Make sure your partner is putting in as much time, but also negotiate for a better working environment at work. So it's funny. Nearly every office building has space for parking cars. They cannot find space for daycare centers, right? Why? I mean, do children take up much more time? Because I do think for as long as, of course, you're going to try and negotiate at home to get better terms with your husband. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But even for both of you, it would be so much easier if your children were with you. Yeah.
Well, also
were on the premises you work.
When you talk about that, then it brings me to the issue of, and I don't know how big this still is, where employers say, I'd rather not hire a woman because she's going to take maternity leave this year, maybe maternity leave another year, 2 years later, or even a year later, and then again, and it just doesn't seem to make sense. Then the children are sick, so she's barely at work.
Right, and that's why we should negotiate for men getting the 3 months we get for maternity leave, so he too can take time off, right? Because he's also a parent. He should take, and maybe he won't take it, you know, the first 4 months of the child's life, but over time he'll be the one who does immunization and whatever, and when the maid runs away, he's the one who stays at home. Because I think, again, like I said, as a society, even as capitalism, if you're in that part of society, it's in our interest that new human beings come into existence and they are raised, you know, and raised well, such that they can be good employees 20 years from now. Yes. Oh, but so there's no reason why, though, it's falling to just one gender to do that.
Well, Lydia, because our time is fast spent, my final question to you, and when we come back to this obvious sexism in the workplace, what should you do if you experience it? And I think the thing that I've noticed the most is when it happens now for a lot of women in the workplace, they laugh because, you know what, you don't know if you should. So if a man makes lewd jokes, you're not sure, so they laugh. They are trying to cover up for the embarrassment they feel. They're trying to make light of it. And, you know, what should be your reaction? We've seen what's happened in the Western world. We've seen how women have stood up and responded and reacted.
40 years late.
40, well, at least they've come out doing something now. But should public shaming be the only way to go? What should you do?
I think people are public shaming because the workplace didn't choose to react to it. So I think, and there are lots of women in, say, Human Resources Department should be thinking about these things, how to make the workplace a better, safer, more comfortable working environment for women. Unfortunately, as we've seen from, say, like the public service regulations on dressing,
dress code, yeah.
It is more about making it a comfortable
world for men.
Yes. And it's more really making women even more uncomfortable at work, right? But the thing is, So now, we have the advantage of seeing how explosive the Western world reaction to sexual harassment at the workplace, which we haven't talked about nearly enough, by the way, has been, right? We have the advantage of seeing how explosive it has been, and we then can avoid, getting to that. I don't think even the women who are coming out would have chosen that as their first reaction. They would have loved to know, I can go talk to somebody about this and
something happens.
Something will
happen.
What
would be your first reaction?
My first reaction always is be forceful as a human, as a person, right?
As an individual.
Set my boundaries. I don't care if you don't like me for a week, but if you say something inappropriate to me, you're going to hear an earful. Those how many words do we say in a day? you will hear them. Yes, you will hear them in under an hour if you say something inappropriate to me. So I think that's always the first thing is assert yourself, assert your boundaries. But that an entire company cannot depend on women asserting themselves and that being a solution. So companies should have and should communicate what the actual procedure for complaining about sexual harassment should be. It is, yes.
I don't think that it has increased in the last few years. I just think that there are a lot more avenues for people to share their story with social media and people. And then because you're connected across the world, you'll have a lot of support from places that you wouldn't have had it. And then it will, the nature of social media and things like that, it will grow, bring on debate. And before you know it, it's hitting workplaces, it's hitting local bars and things like that. I think there is no silver bullet. It would be remiss, it would be quite inaccurate to say that it is this one thing. Probably across the globe, there's a lot of culture that looks at women as less than or as biological things to be used for their biological uses. Oh, that is a mouthful. But yeah, and I think that is one. But I think that there's also the culture of where you work or the culture of the particular industry. There are some industries that for the longest time were very male-dominated by the nature of how they were, whether it's in manufacturing and things. And as time changed and it became easier for women to join in because either technology changed or times changed, a bit of the culture, the banter around the men didn't change.
So for me, the first is in structures. We're not seeing enough women at the top. The second thing, which is close to structure, I think, is roles. A lot of women can do most of the jobs that men can do. Be it technical, engineering. Look at the judges today. In my own profession, I think the judges, we can have more female judges representing women, but also because women are mothers, they can well ably represent issues pertaining to sons and boys and houseboys and their husbands. Women every day go through occupational hazards because of their maternal role or even just our physiological nature. I know a lot of women who are disadvantaged, maybe because they undergo cramps, they get cramps, during the month, so they are asked to step aside. They are asked not to return on duty once they go for maternity leave, or even just the mere sign that you're pregnant. Even if you're 4 months pregnant, it becomes visible. Then the passes start, and the manager asks you to step aside, or takes away the more favorable tasks and hands them to the men. Perhaps for avoidance of doubt, let me say both male and female can actually perpetuate sexism. But what is sad is we are our own violators, our own worst enemies. And some examples, include one, women being lazy in the workplace. When you get that job, it is called a job because you are expected to work. So put in the man hours. I mean, they're man hours for a reason. It's the hard work, So put your best foot forward, dress the part. You can't look good for an interview in a suit or a kitengi, and then tomorrow you come around like you're in your backyard. You're not gardening in someone's office. So we must dress the part, we must look the part, and have a continuous capacity building. Women must read. A lot of us are not reading.
And one of the things that I recommend, for example, for companies is to put policies. For example, in terms of hiring, make it clear in the policies. Because if you don't put in the policy, people hold their own prejudices and they bring those prejudices to the workplace and they will discriminate against women. So if it's within the policy of the company that, for example, if we have a job, we open it to both men and women.
And I'll give an example of what happened when I was still working out in Nairobi. And you got two senior managers who go out for a conference out of the country. One is, of course, more senior than the other. One reports to the other. And then when they come back from that conference, the lady comes to my desk to say, my boss is sexually harassing me. As usual, I get a private space to have conversation with her to just try and find out what actually happened. And she tells me, you know, we were at that place, we went out for dinner. After dinner, we were walking back to you get back to the hotel and you're walking upstairs to your room. The guy said something, she was walking in front and I think the guy made a comment to the effect that she's welcome to the room. Then I asked her what happened then. Said no, she pretended she didn't hear. She just walked on. But she heard the guy saying something in Kenya, karibu. Something, karibu means welcome. Yeah. I think that's a very thin borderline. If you're a more senior person, there are certain jokes that you don't crack with the subordinate staff, especially at that time of the day. You've come out from having dinner, you've probably had a glass or two of wine. It could be misunderstood to mean you're putting her under pressure to come to your room. So mitigating factor for him was it had never happened before. It hadn't happened again as a follow-up on that. So what we decided to do with that guy is give him very strong caution. Because we know it, at least I believe strongly, that the higher you go, the more your words are taken really, really seriously. What you would expect to come off as a joke would actually be misconstrued to mean almost you're giving a directive. The second one on career progression, which I know we talked about, is two guys joined the organization at the same time. One is male, one is female. And then 3 years down the line, 4 years down the road, the guy is one level higher than the woman. So the lady comes to see and say, you know, Milton, this guy and me came at the same time. How come he's one level higher than me and I'm still where we were? But again, things like that, usually you dig down. What has the performance been over the last 3 years? What's the kind of development they have been exposed to over the last 3 years? What's the kind of value addition that they bring over the last 3 years? For this particular case, what happened is in those 3 and a bit years, the lady had been off about 6 months for the 2 pregnancies that she had. Unfortunately for her, when she comes back from maternity leave, she wasn't investing enough of her time and energy to catch up. She wasn't investing enough of her time to improve on her own skills and competence in the organization. You know, the working world is where, or every organization would like the best. You would like to promote the best of the best. So every employee, what we tell them always is, how do you make yourself the most competitive for the next level promotion? Push yourself, ask for help, ask for coaching, ask for development opportunities, ask to be involved in different projects. That's the only way that you know, and all the successful ladies you know around the world, that's exactly what they did. You know, it's the proven way to do it, you know, and just do it. Yeah. The comment you made about number of women in senior managerial roles. That's a big thing. I think all the major companies that I know of, in the last 10 years, that has been a major focus of all the organizations. It's all driven by the realization that diversity in the workplace brings business success. The other thing, which I think could be done, and I think it's happening as well, but could be done more, is even when I said the ratio is 60-40, we've got 40 of the ladies who have made it, who have broken that ceiling. it would be great to see a more active engagement, a more active coaching, a more active mentoring of successful women supporting the others who are still struggling to do. Because they say a woman talking to a woman, there's a more commonality of minds than just doing the corporate helping to get that. I know, and I've seen a lot of that happening in Uganda. I've seen it happening in the region, across the different countries in Africa, but I think there's a lot more that can happen on that. There's a lot more that can happen on that front.
And that's it for our show tonight. Thank you for watching. You can find this episode on our YouTube page, on Facebook, and we've been tweeting about it as well, so you can find that on Twitter with the hashtag PWJK.
Do your monthly basic bouquet subscription of 18,000 shillings before it expires. Then enjoy 3 free days only on StarTimes. Enjoy digital life.